Now it is useful to look toward Palenque. Some time ago I explored that marvelous tomb. Truly, Palenque offers magnificent surprises. We found an entire funerary city around the site, but is still waiting to be discovered. It is unfortunate that many temples and sepulchres are still completely covered by the jungle. We were amazed by all of this, and we found marvelous and extraordinary stories from the people of Palenque. I remember the unusual case of a woman from the United States who came to Palenque and requested the services of a friend of mine, a man who has dedicated many years exclusively to the investigation of the Mayans. Naturally, he could not refuse. The lady asked him to be her guide, and he agreed willingly. However, an unusual situation arose. Just as the guide was about to get into the car, she stopped him and said, "You are the guide, but you will have to obey me. I will tell you exactly where in the forest we need to stop." Of course, the man was perplexed. How is it, he wondered, that she asks me to guide her, yet she is the one directing me? Who is guiding whom? They entered the car. The lady was accompanied by her husband. When they arrived at a certain place, she ordered him to stop. "Here it is." The guide was astonished. He had no idea what was happening. She and her husband got out of the car and asked the guide to do the same. They locked the car and she said, "We will walk straight ahead through that mountain, and there we will find the place." A woman who had only recently arrived from the United States behaving in such a way was enough to confuse him completely. He had no idea what to think. The lady walked toward the mountain ahead of them, then suddenly stopped. "Here it is." She removed some stones, and to the guide's amazement, a human skeleton appeared, a sepulchre. "Let's go," she said. The guide and her husband followed her back to the car. They returned to the town of Palenque. She paid him, and she left. Nothing more was ever heard of this woman. I later visited that same place in the middle of the forest. The guide was the one who led me there. He said, "Here, there is a magnetic center. Master, can you tell me exactly where it is located?" I sensed telepathically that the magnetic center was located precisely at the sepulchre, hidden among the stones. I said, "Here, the magnetic force is stronger." The guide asked if it existed anywhere else. "Let's walk around," I told him. Then I said, "Here is the opposite pole of the magnetic center." The guide exclaimed, "You're right, Master. This is it." We returned to the center. He removed the stones, and once again the skeleton appeared. It was then that the guide told me the strange story I have just related to you. There are many interesting stories in Palenque that capture one's attention. That guide is in contact with the Mayans, and it is fascinating that the Mayan people still exist. For example, an elder was asked, "When do you think the catastrophe that threatens the world will come?" He answered, "In Katun 13. "Will your son see it?" "No, my son will not see it." "Will your grandson see it?" "Yes, my grandson will see it." "In what year will Katun 13 begin its activity?" "In the year 2043, he replied. Truly, a great catastrophe is expected, and the Mayans are well informed. Someone whose name I will not mention, an important authority in official anthropology, once said, "The Mayans had no astronomical knowledge, they were ignorant." Yet the reality is that they possessed profound astronomical understanding. Even today, they make great mathematical calculations. The Mayans taught my friend, the guide, a system based on corn and coffee beans that allows one to perform mathematical operations in thousandths of a second. A great professor of mathematics once appeared. My friend said to him, "You can use computers very well, and you are a professor of mathematics, but I challenge you to solve a mathematical problem. I will use the Mayan system, and you may use your computer." The man replied, "You may know quite a bit, but you are being disrespectful." "No, sir," my friend said. "I am not being disrespectful. I simply want to show you that the Mayans are experts in mathematics." While you use a computer to do your calculations, here the same calculations are done much faster than any machine. If you want, let's try it. The professor, full of pride, preferred to remain silent. He looked at his watch and said it was too late, then left. Therefore, observe that the Mayans are not ignorant as many believe. They spend their time doing astronomical calculations, and they know that a world, which scientists have already named Barnard 1, is approaching the Earth. This world belongs to another solar system, has a huge orbit, and is coming dangerously close to our planet. When Barnard 1 becomes visible to the naked eye, extraordinary catastrophic events will occur. The Mayans are not unaware of this. As written in Cartoon 13, that gigantic world will, through magnetic force, draw all the internal fire of the Earth toward the surface. Volcanoes will appear everywhere, and terrible earthquakes and cataclysms will follow. According to the Mayans, this will happen in Cartoon 13, in the year 2043. They are preparing for this event. They say, "My son will not see it, my grandson will see it." So, they are great wise men. According to their doctrine, it is written, at the maximum point of the approach of Barnard I, a revolution of the Earth's axis will occur. The oceans will change their beds, and the present continents will be swallowed by the seas. In other words, there will be a radical transformation of the entire geological physiognomy of our world. What is astonishing is that the Mayans since ancient times judged our present humanity. They say that when Cartoon 13 arrives, it will be possible to see in the streets of the great cities men of 2 days, who would be the shame of this race. When we investigated this phrase, men of 2 days, we concluded that it referred to homosexuals, that the whole world would become perverted through homosexuality and lesbianism, something that, according to them, is being fulfilled today. The great universal conflagration predicted by Nostradamus is already written in the Mayan Cartoon 13. They say, the fire will burn like blood everywhere, and anything alive will be consumed. Thus, the Mayans are not ignorant of what is coming. I remained for some time in the sepulchre of god Pakal. It was extraordinary. That tomb has a massive carved stone covering it. Don Pedro Ferres, a distinguished gentleman dedicated to research in the field of flying saucers, a serious man in these studies, believes that the stone slab covering the tomb of the Mayan god Pakal depicts an astronaut or space traveler. Although I admire Pedro Ferres, I regret to disagree with him because I carefully examined that great gravestone and was able to verify directly that god Pakal was not an inhabitant of another planet, as Don Pedro believes. On that enormous stone, which weighs several tons and covers the sepulchre, there appears a great cross made of corn stalks. This invites deep reflection on the Mayans, Nahuatls, Zapotecs, Toltecs, and others. Corn is sacred. It allegorizes or symbolizes the human seed. For example, in China, India, Japan, and other places, the human seed is symbolized by rice, while in the Christian countries of Europe and the Middle East, it is symbolized by wheat. A cross made of corn stalks is tremendously significant, because we know very well that the cross is an instrument of liberation, not only of martyrdom. Truly, the penetration of the vertical phallus into the horizontal vessel forms the cross. And if that cross is made of corn stalks, it indicates something extraordinary. Within the ens seminis, the entity of the semen that contains the ens virtutis of the fire, there exist extraordinary powers. The ens seminis, the sacred human seed, contains formidable, transcendental, mystical powers. These powers were studied with great care by the Mayans, not only in Palenque but also in Cancun, Chichen Itza, and other places. If people understood the power contained in the ens seminis, they would never waste those energies in the brutal satisfaction of animal passions. Instead, they would learn to transmute them. The Mayans knew this science. They knew that if the glass of Hermes was not spilled, that is, if the mistake of ejaculating the ens seminis was not committed, it would be transformed into creative energy. In this manner, the brain becomes seminized and the semen becomes cerebrized. As a result, a third force appears in the human being, a profoundly divine force, the sacred fire. When this fire ascends through the spinal column, it transforms us radically. It transforms us into true supermen, like God Pakal. You descended the stairs leading to God Pakal's sepulchre. A triangular stone had originally sealed the entrance. Now it sits to the side. The fact that this stone is triangular reminds us of the many triangular stones found in the Gothic cathedrals of Europe. For the Christian world, such a triangular stone would represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the three forces of nature: holy affirmation, holy denial, and holy conciliation. Without these three forces, creation cannot exist. When they flow in different directions, nothing is created. A new cosmic unity arises within infinite space only when these three forces coincide at a given point. The same happens in the perfect marriage. The man is the positive force, the woman is the negative force, and the third force, holy conciliation, unites them both. When these three forces come together, a new creation arises, a new son, a new child. The Mayans understood all of this, so it is significant that the stone sealing God Pakal's tomb is triangular. On the chest of God Pakal, there is a beautifully crafted pectoral with 9 necklaces. These 9 necklaces represent the 9th Dantean circle, the well of the universe within the human being, the human abyss. His creative organs indicate that God Pakal was a man who transformed the sacred sperm into creative energy. A completely chaste man, upright in the fullest sense of the word. A man who never adulterated, who never fornicated. Around his neck appear 3 additional necklaces representing the 3 primary forces of nature and the cosmos. This indicates that God Pakal was able to crystallize within himself the force of the Father, the force of the Son, and the force of the Holy Spirit. If you want, I can also refine the translation, neutralize controversial claims, or modernize the language further. The holy affirmation, the holy denial, and the holy conciliation. This means that God Pakal was able to form those 3 forces within himself. God Pakal has 10 rings on his 10 fingers, which indicate the 10 Sephiroth of the Hebrew Kabbalah. He was a man filled with extraordinary virtues, a magnificent man, a true avatar or messenger for the humanity of his epoch, a man who gave great knowledge to the Mayans. In his hands there appears a cube, a cubic stone, and in the other hand, a sphere. The cube indicates that he was wise to the point of possessing the philosophical stone, the stone of truth, a man who had found truth. The sphere indicates that he was a perfect man, one who had awakened his consciousness, a man who enjoyed infinite wisdom. However, in all of this there is something frightening, something terrifying. He was buried with 6 beheaded men. It is a symbolic aspect, yet the 6 decapitations were real. 6 men were beheaded and buried with God Pakal in order to transmit a message to posterity. We must recognize that the way of transmitting such a message was extremely bloody. With this, the Mayans wanted to say that this man had eliminated all his psychological defects, because when we consult the Hebrew Kabbalah, we see the 6-pointed star of King Solomon. The 6 points are masculine, and the 6 openings between point and point are feminine. The 12 radiations are decomposed through alchemy into the 12 constellations of the zodiac. The number 6 also reminds us of the lover, of love, of passion. In other words, this man eliminated from himself all his passionate defects, all the psychic aggregates that caused him suffering. He attained maximum perfection, and the testimony left for posterity was the 6 beheaded men. Without some knowledge of the Hebrew Kabbalah, it would be impossible to understand the meaning of the 6 beheaded. The tomb of God Pakal is tremendous. He has a jade mask reconstructed by the Museum of Anthropology. This mask indicates that his face was so perfect that it had to be hidden from the profane. The face of a man god. For this reason, an entire monument was built to bury that great avatar or messenger of the Mayans, who was called Pakal. Pakal was a man who worked with corn, with the seed. On the stone slab covering his tomb, he appears to be descending from the cross. It is then that Don Pedro Ferres believes he is operating some kind of device capable of traveling through space. There also appears the symbol of the planet Mars, indicating that God Pakal was somehow related to the planet Mars. However, this does not mean that he was an inhabitant or extraterrestrial from Mars, but rather a man influenced by Martian radiation, an energetic, strong man who knew how to teach his doctrine to the Mayans. When investigating all these Mayan matters, all these anthropological aspects, we must become deeply reflective. According to the Mayans, we are now living in the time when a great catastrophe is approaching. They say that before this great catastrophe arrives, there will be wars all over the world. And this is also affirmed by the prophecies of prominent wise men. We are seeing wars everywhere. For example, the Middle East is on the verge of a new war. There are calamities, many of them, before the arrival of Cartoon 13. Consider that the floor of the oceans is cracking. In the Pacific, for example, there are cracks so deep that they are already putting water in contact with the liquid fire of the Earth's interior. As a consequence, enormous pressures and vapors are forming within the Earth. These vapors produce tremendous earthquakes and submarine tremors here and there. The Earth is in great agony, and scientists are aware of this. The fish of the oceans are becoming extinct because of contamination, and many human beings are becoming ill for the same reason. The air is polluted, and many people are getting sick because of the pollution. Certain scientists have said that if we cannot correct the contamination, within 40 years at least half of humanity will be dead. At the present moment, lands are becoming sterile. They are increasingly unable to produce what humanity needs. There are 4.5 billion people on Earth, and the cultivable land is in agony. The fruits of the land have been adulterated by the know-it-alls who, with their great knowledge, have caused enormous damage. They have grafted plants onto other plants, producing fruits that are pleasant to the eye, but lack the vital powers of genuine fruits. It's absurd to try to correct nature. She knows what she is doing. Therefore, my dear friends, after having traveled through the lands of Mayab and having learned what is coming to the world, the Cartoon 13, I wish to speak to you tonight to say that the Mayans were not an ignorant people, and that all the peoples of Mexico were endowed with profound wisdom. Inferential peace. Samael Aun Weor.